It's okay. We're just getting going here. So, good afternoon. I am Anto Budiarjo. Welcome to Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday afternoon as we continue to try and figure out what the future lies for smarter buildings. It's really good to have you. In case you're wondering who we are, our profiles are listed on mondaylive.org. Just to point out an important fact here that the views expressed here on this hour are personal, not of any company or organization. Just keep that in mind. And please do make this as interactive as we can with comments and questions on the Zoom chat. Makes it a much better conversation. And if there's anything on this slide deck that you need, it's also on mondaylive.org. So this being March, the fifth week in March, the fifth Monday in March, some months are just long when it comes to lots of Mondays. March being one of them. So we have been talking about, are we, meaning the HVAC industry, AI ready with regards to commercial buildings. So that's a topic for the month. And this is our final edition of that. And what we're going to be talking about beyond our normal news and trends and chit chat is last week we ended talking about we are obviously in a silo. We are in the HVAC silo. And we started at the end of last week talking about the readiness of our silo versus the readiness of other silos that exist in buildings with respect to AI. So we want to dig into that a little bit more today because that's important. But before we do that, I'm going to hand it over to Ken Sinclair for an update from automatedbuildings.com.
Thanks, Anto. I'd start up in the left-hand corner there with something that came out of our Wednesday meeting, is that we spent probably a good portion of our Wednesday meeting just talking about how fast everything was changing in an AI world. And we needed to just discuss what had changed over a week because there was different, just everything is just coming on us. And I found this article out of Oxford that I linked to, and then some of the work that my contributing editor, Thomas, has been doing. And more we need to get involved in the psychological side of AI and understand where it's coming from and why, and start to take apart all the components of AI. And I think that article is a good start on that. Right directly below that is our summary of last week's session, was is your building data AI ready? I think again AI captured did a good capture of that. And it also then referred to the ontology and context in System of Systems article that Anto wrote. And I think that's a good step, how that's all coming together. We've added below that, too long did not read, scaling up building design. This is just taking some of the video from AHR and trying to do a summary for it because everyone's so busy. No one has chance to actually read all of this stuff. And so if they can get a quick thing by reviewing or just going through the page, the summaries that we've written. And there's also one done for the decarbonization. Our goal is to pick through all 15 of them and get that online for folks. In the middle there, Danielle made a post, and I kind of like the words there. She said, AI is going to make us better humans, not be better than humans. And I think that's, again, something that we need to think about. And as I mentioned, more and more, we need to understand what is this thing called AI and what are the components of it, what are the prejudices, and just what's what. Keeping moving over there, the edge AI is heating up. This was a post, I think Kimon brought it to our attention. I think that's the big opportunity for our industry, is AI at the edge. I think we can build a whole bunch of devices And with the progress we've made in connection to open systems, open computing, and the Linux Foundation and C4SB, all of those things are IBB, all of those things are pieces that help us push AI to the edge. And we are an industry who are the edge. We build these devices, but the devices on the edge are doing are way beyond just controlling temperature and opening doors and windows and blinds and stuff. We're getting human opinion, AI agents that basically gather human opinions and feed that into the process. So interesting stuff. The Oh, I missed underneath Danielle. There's a special edition of a book, a Genic AI book launched. So it's anybody that has time to read, it should be a good read. I haven't had time to read it. The one down in the corner came from Kimon was at the convention in Baltimore. And if you've seen the posts that he's done since then, and he has a post on automated buildings just came on this morning. And yes, there's a lot of stuff going on. This is the first time we've seen posts actually sing songs and rap. And there's just an amazing amount of information. It's a great demonstration of what the power of AI is in producing. Uh, I'm calling it almost a new medium. It's a very, very interesting thing. I think we're gonna have to have a discussion about that someday on Monday Live.
It's pretty
Anyway,
cool. Able to
sorry?
be actually in that. There's a brief, 5-second clip of Facile in action at a large retail portfolio. So that was pretty cool. I didn't even know he was going to do that. So pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. When you're watching it, your mind's going so many directions, just what you're seeing and imagining how you could use this tool, how you could, the actual message he's getting across. Yeah, I'm almost dumbfounded to try and get around. Definitely, if you haven't seen both of his latest posts, take a look at them. Back to you, Anto.
Yeah, all we got to do is just convince Kimon to join us on Monday Live and do a live rap.
Yes.
The price of admission.
Great, thank you, Ken. So I actually put up this slide. I've actually shown this slide, previous versions of this slide, several times in the past few years. This is a firm called IoT Analytics, and every quarter, what they do is they take all of the big company CEO quarterly reports, and they basically analyze the words that's being used in the report, in all the reports. And it's like over 8,000 reports that they look at every quarter. And they basically use that data to create this chart in terms of what words CEOs were talking about in those reports. And so this is what it is for Q1 of 2025. Over here in big and growing in importance, things like tariff and uncertainty, we know what that is all about. And there's things that are growing. So things at the top of this thing is things that are growing since last quarter. So all of these are kind of all growing really rapidly. Agentic AI being the key one there. So just a little snapshot of where we are. If you actually click on this, you'll see the article that goes into some discussion. No. So that's where we are. The link board is normal. Any other thoughts anybody want to bring up before we move on?
Jim Lee here. I just wanted to put an end note. When we first started Monday Live, we were in the beginning of the pandemic, and we talked about the effect that the pandemic would have on commercial real estate. And here we are a number of years later, and just want to report on articles that I'm seeing in Boston. So the cleansing of the commercial real estate market has finally begun, as these guys have kicked the can down the road on notes and other things they could as long as possible. And so we're getting into bankruptcies and sales of a lot of the downtown office market that's been abandoned. And things seem to be trading for 20 to 30%, maybe 40% of their pre-pandemic values. So because a lot of these assets are very big assets, the people that are being affected the most are institutional money that had invested in that commercial real estate. But those guys are getting their clocks cleaned now, and these assets are coming back online, able to tolerate much lower rents. Hopefully we'll see somewhat of a revitalization, and hopefully those buildings will either be repurposed into residential or really start that move. But it's taken from the beginning of the pandemic for now, for that entire business cycle, somewhat driven by 7-year notes, I'm told, to have that effect. That's my comment.
Good one.
Thank you. You're commenting because of Boston, because you're close to that. Is this
I'm
something that we're
in
seeing?
Boston. I don't know if it's happening nationally, but those are the local data points.
Okay. Keep
Wasn't
an eye
the,
on that.
wasn't the slogan survive to 25?
Yep.
They didn't.
Okay, let's move on to, are we AI ready? So it's been a few weeks. We started off saying, what does this even mean, being AI ready? So that was one conversation that was interesting. Then we went down the path of shouldn't we think about it as a building as being either AI ready or not? So that was an interesting conversation, which was not clear cut. I don't think that it's a good way of looking at it. Then we spent a week talking about the workforce and all those sort of issues related to the fact that AI is not really going to replace the workforce. It's AI-enabled workers that are. And then last week we talked about the fact that if you don't have data, then you really don't have AI, and we may end up with bored AIs, robots, which is not a good thing. And so this week we're going to talk about buildings, the silos. Are they ready? So we've talked about silos a lot, and I think I've used this slide in the past. Silos is our way of sort of thinking about all of the different trades and all the different domains that exist in the building. And really, the approach that this group tends to subscribe to is really the fact that all of these silos are really what a building is. And therefore, if you're thinking about AI operating on a building, while there are AI components that are obviously in these silos, but the way to ideally think about it is as the building, from the building owner's perspective, and it's really AI being able to look at all of these different silos and trying to make sense of it so that can improve the performance and of the building for the owner. So we actually want this kind of thing where the AI is working at this sort of virtual level. So that's just sort of the frame this discussion, but I'm going to stop my share and open it up to the conversation here. So silos, are we as a silo? I think one of the problems is that are we looking for data from other silos, or is it a matter of, is it a case of us from this silo providing data to other silos? Which one of those is important?
I think it's two things. I'll jump in. It's two things. First of all, yes, we are the bottleneck. We are the siloed off. We don't even share information amongst ourselves, let alone third party or other verticals. So yeah, we finally have learned to play nice and not take our toys home. So yeah, that's the first thing. Other thing is that these other companies they've been having web APIs since like for 25 years since the early days of XML. So I always, even 25 years ago, I used to use the example of Hertz Rent-A-Car and American Airlines. Like you got your schedule on your American Airline, flight. Would you like to reserve a car? Everything's already synced up. I assure you, Hertz CIO did not talk to American Airlines CIO. It's just consumable. It's a web service. It's self-describing, literally. And yeah, other people have been moving on for decades, and this is not a problem. So I'm gonna say that we're the problem. We're in our own little private silo. The rest of the world has figured this out, pretty much. That's my opinion.
Well, David's not here, but last week he was talking about problems with getting sort of things like lease data and that kind of information about the building.
But that's the sensitive nature of the lease information. So a lot of times we discuss, we take sensitive data as meaning that it's siloed data. How about the point of sale data for a retailer? I bet you they share that with all kind of vendors on a need to know basis, right? Their accounting system is tied in lots of times. Like who doesn't do that? So I think it's the data, it's the sensitivity level of it. So yeah, we can point to sensitive lease documents or PCI compliance with credit cards and stuff, which is always the empty excuse that's used with retailers. Like it's PCI. We don't need your credit card information. This is not consumer. We just want your foot traffic and other stuff that's relevant for serving your customers better. So I think it's a false narrative that we just keep perpetuating. But again, the whole world uses all this data as they need to do it. I'm sure every leasing office has shared their data with the appropriate folks as necessary. Why? Because it drives business value and they're almost forced into doing it. So really, that's the thing. That's the point of it. We spend a lot of time fretting about the lack of connectivity, but when are we going to drive business value to enable those silos to be unlocked and this interoperability? And that's what we've been focused on.
I agree completely, Keith, but the only problem is how do we get at some of those things politically, right? There was enough impetus in your airline car rental example for that hurdle to be overcome.
Yep.
But we're back to the attaining escape velocity from the janitorial closet problem, which is that, I'm not the chairman of Avis Rent-A-Car, right? So when I try to bring a value proposition like that, I don't necessarily get the buy-in from people that I need. In other words, we are in a business that has been predicated on bid and spec sales of new equipment, connected to the construction industry, and in an industry where people don't understand enterprise value propositions. So I see the problem as being more of a political one, with getting people willing to share or even understanding what those value propositions are, or understanding the value propositions across the silos. So, I mean, the example you brought up is an excellent one. And I'm not going to say that it was obvious, because maybe it wasn't obvious to people at the time, but they rapidly saw the value and spanned that gap. And I'm looking for how we can do that here as well.
Yeah, and yet 25 years ago, the energy manager at Neiman Marcus, Marty Kimball, rest in peace, we had real-time access to not only their point of sale information for cash register readings, to he was driving his AC use. The example we gave was, okay, maybe Neiman Marcus sells a few more mink coats if it's colder. Like literally, he was trying to coordinate the cash register readings with his retail sales, and we did that. That's why the EDX, or Enterprise Data Exchange Platform, was built. It was for Neiman Marcus in 2004, 2005. And oh, by the way, we also had a real-time encrypted feed to Fleet Bank, which was their bank. It was the bank. So we saw all the financial information and the cash register rings and NOAA weather stations and their building control systems, their maintenance. So I'm not sure if that was a fluke. Maybe it was. Jim. You know, maybe that was a once in a lifetime opportunity by a visionary, you know, energy manager. I don't know, but I have never been able to duplicate that in 25 years.
Well, I mean, I think that's an awesome example, but I think you've just hit the nail on the head, which is, you know, are there value propositions that are compelling enough for people to care about? And in the car rental airline case, there absolutely were. And in the mink coat case, you know, maybe there were, maybe there weren't, or maybe it was too complex to get that story out. But to me, that is the riddle that we have to solve. I agree with you. We've had those one-off, you know, tremendous solutions as well, but I haven't found them easy to spread.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, this guy's the energy manager, and he's literally thinking as of energy not as an uncontrollable cost, but as a strategic resource flow into his business. Like, I mean, take the Christmas lights. Like, these are big old. This is old school, big, gigantic, incandescent Christmas lights. It's in their Beverly Hills location. Their energy, you know, energy use went up by like 10 to 15%. What are you going to do? Cut the Christmas lights off to save energy? The stores lit up, and that brings in foot traffic from like wealthy people. So, you know, if the Christmas lights cost this much, but I'm making this much more money, that was his whole reasoning. So we have to look at energy as a strategic ingredient or cost or raw material in our businesses. And I think that's the conversation that we're trying to drive. It's not just about squeezing every penny and turning off the Christmas lights and losing, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever in retail sales because you're trying to save energy.
Yeah, I mean, the argument that I've made over the years is that there are billions, if not trillions of dollars that have transacted in enterprise management over the years in every vertical: accounting, HR, supply chain, ERP, manufacturing, resource planning. I go on indefinitely. There are lots and lots of enterprise value propositions that have been made. But we boil it down to our industry, and we're in a space where customers have demanded hard energy paybacks or other things while not wanting to take part in that enterprise value. And that's been a history. And the question is, you know, can we change that?
Yeah.
How much of this do you guys think is unrational fear versus justified fear?
I'm going to bring Glenn on, by the way, but that's a great question. 90% what?
Unrational, irrational. That would be my guess.
I'm going to keep taking the
If I
opposite.
could jump in on that, I think that these fears are simply used as an excuse not to do anything.
Yeah. Well, and in order to get interoperability among all the systems, you have to change all of the systems, right? Some of these changes might not be all that easy. Making lease data available in a consumable way, where, you know, most leases are done through PDFs and things like that. You know, that's not trivial. I mean, I'm sure there are systems that do it, but so I think companies look at the overall investment of this as opposed in thinking that they have to solve the entire problem instead of, you know, kind of chipping away at it as they go along.
The biggest challenge I always saw was getting all the building systems onto the same IP network in order to exchange the data easily. That was always the biggest hurdle to get over, and then have that network be managed by the IT team with security patches and proper security provisioning of everything. But that's usually in organizations where they're the owner of the building and the operator of the building. It's somewhat easier and at times somewhat harder if you have a REIT that owns a commercial office building with potentially dozens of different tenants, but they're still running and managing the building. there's definitely a reason to have a converged IT network that is in essence OT. But what is always the challenge is the IT groups that I've worked with are so oversubscribed and so underpaid that they're just trying to keep the wheels on, and asking them to administer, potentially a second network with an air gap or manage a logically separate network is frequently a lot to take on if they've never done it before.
I agree. I agree those things can be challenging, but as somebody who's been in this space for a long time, we've got the data, we've solved them, and we've hit other problems which are much more concerning to me. So if you really look at analytics and FDD and what it's become, what we're basically selling is Big Brother, looking over the mechanical systems, the control systems, the people operating the systems, the outside service contractors servicing the systems, and ourselves. And we tell people that we build that into a continuous improvement process. But what we often find is that transparency has huge value, maybe too much value to certain stakeholders. So if we build our Big Brother enterprise to look over these outsourced service contracts, well, all of the facilities management's being outsourced and we can see into what they're doing, suddenly we've provided huge value to the procurement arms, to other people through this outsourcing behavior. The only problem is these people are afraid of that transparency and that information. But if they did that outsourcing instead of controlling it, if it looks very wasteful, that's going to reflect poorly on them. And navigating politics at that level is where I've found this business to get into really sticky territory.
And I also question the actual experience factor here in doing stuff like this, because we hear a lot of narratives. I'm not trying to say anything anybody doesn't know what they're talking about, but the fact is the cloud becomes the aggregation point. So you don't need separate, like every retailer I've ever dealt with, like we got 1,500 store customer here for years, and every single store has their own private network. And so it's the cloud is the aggregator. As long as we can reach out on top and get out of that store. And then the other thing is that these companies have been on Azure and AWS for decades. Some of them, even before those two, they've been on the cloud. The United States government, GSA, is on the cloud. Everyone is moving to the cloud. So the cloud is not this, scary place to put all our whole world is running on the cloud right now. So much so that one retailer, in fact, a lot of grocery store retailers won't even let you use AWS. And this is public knowledge. I'm not describing anything that's secret. They don't want to enable a competitor through or have money going to Amazon because Amazon Fresh is a competitive nature. They require that you're on Azure. You can't even use AWS. That's how much a commitment they've made to be on Azure. They're already on Azure. Most grocery stores, supermarkets, retailers, maybe not universities and stuff like that. They're in silos, but these large portfolio, national key account portfolio, customers, they're already on the cloud. And they have been for a long time. That's a false narrative.
So
Can we get Glenn? Would love to get Glenn's perspective on this.
yeah, maybe before Glenn weighs in, I'd like to ask a question I think is going on unasked, which is the benefits of crossing the silos or bringing the silos together. Who's responsible for selling those benefits?
Good question.
Great question.
In our value proposition, it's us, right?
Mhm.
Because we're turning up. There isn't anyone in that role, Steve.
Right. That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
Is-
So
isn't that-
if you aspire to
isn't
be
that
an
called an
enterprise seller,
opportunity?
yeah, no, if you aspire to be an enterprise seller of that value proposition, it's you.
Yes,
Right.
that is an opportunity, guys. I mean, that's a big opportunity. I think the thing people keep missing, though, is that eventually you have to, as you convey that opportunity, you have to actually inform people that getting access to data they don't own or control and being cooperative across silos and degrees of control and so forth, will become a minimum requirement for competing in a data-driven world in the future. And I mean, we've done a lot of analysis that basically says roughly more than half the data you'll ever need to run your business in a future AI-driven world is going to come from somebody else. And so I just go back to my preschool analogy. We share because we care. That's what they taught us. And I do agree, Jim, with your perspective on Big Brother, but sooner or later we have to move the value proposition past all this kind of whatever Neanderthal behavior.
So
My
I shut
key point
everybody
is when I listen, before you start, Rick, when I listen to Jim and Keith and I know Tracy, all three of you actively embrace selling the enterprise solution. That's in part, that's why you're on this call, because you lead relative to the overall industry. My question for all the people who aren't listening to us, but are out there, right? And caught in their silo is what's going to move the needle? I mean, really, truly, how's the bulk of the market going to wake up to the fact that if they want to really improve the operation of a building, somebody's got to be out. Everybody has a role to play here in selling enterprise solutions.
That's a very good question that you posed on this whole thing. I'm just thinking about it and thinking about how we go to market. We go to market with an enterprise solution, but it's silo. It's a silo, and we're not trying to sell, any other system than what we already have. We'll certainly say, and by the way, ours is open interoperable, but that's different than really trying to show the benefits of sharing data among different disparate systems. So I'm not sure, in some industries there are entities that sell across silos, but it's few and far between, at least in the places where we sell, kind of the small bit SMB kind of operations in restaurants, convenience stores, things like that. So yeah, that's a good
it
point.
came up earlier, but this the way that procurement happens and the way that we're stuck in the janitor closet, procurement has shaped our industry to be responsive to bid and spec, the current way things are bought and decisions are made. And so this huge opportunity for somebody to step in and become an enterprise selling entity is not sort of naturally in the last 40 years of our DNA as an industry. But for somebody to step into that spot, it's a huge opportunity. It's really easy to see, and there's owners that are just begging for somebody to step into there. It's not going to be the big industrials of the past, because they're all pulling back, as Jim has described, or they're taking their own strategy, or they're trying to go it alone. So this huge opportunity for somebody to become a new kind of business that is not responding to bid and spec, that is saying, I've got a new kind of value proposition that goes across silos, and this is what it looks like if we accomplish that. It's a huge business opportunity. And to Tracy's point, in other industries,
AI was created for that kind of thing. Exactly.
Yes, and AI is what will drive, I believe, will drive the recognition that, hey, we need somebody to sell this to us. I would like to buy this from somebody, and I don't have anybody I can buy it from right now.
I'd like to put the shoe on the other foot for a minute. Steve asked who's supposed to be selling this value proposition. I want to ask who's supposed to be buying it
Yeah, who's listening?
inside the customer organization. Steve, what's the answer? Is it the CFO? Is it the CIO? Who wants to own this silo to silo enterprise value proposition in the customer?
Oh, well, there's a question, who should and who does? And so I think we know the should. I think we all agree that the should is at the C-suite level. But who does today? Virtually just a handful progressive organizations.
But I don't know that that's true, that it's only a handful. I think it's only a handful right now because they're searching for what model should I use? Who should I turn to? So they turn to their consulting firm. Do they turn to one big vendor? No. Can they afford to start dabbling themselves in-house? No. So again, that's what we're trying to do with setting up some models of, well, these systems are actually fairly easy to connect. Back to what Keith's original point was, if there are systems that are low-hanging fruit that are easy to connect, and we can make ours a little bit easier to connect, well, then here's this model for, it's like a ready-made model for go, now take this to market if you're the vendors, or if you're the customer, ask for this.
Rick, that's a perfect point, because at the very minimum, we could finally see that there's business value in eliminating all this proprietary madness and opening up our systems for real this time and putting an API on top of it. Two, I'm gonna look at it a different way because I'm here. Maybe the control companies don't have to use AI. Maybe that's an entirely different business. I feel like I'm back in 2000 or 1999 when everybody was .com, babyfood.com, dogpoop.com, like everybody was adopting it. And it's the same thing with AI, like AI enabled water I saw the other day. We use AI for our water, to make our water. I'm asking the question, should controls people and companies just enable their platform and let them be pulled through into the AI movement? It just seems kind of self-serving and disingenuous. And I'm serious. I'm not trying to be mean, but we started doing AI 5 years ago. And is it just because that AI is popular now that all of a sudden we're all interested in AI? I don't know if customers are going to buy that. I'm just saying.
In terms of what I feel like we can accomplish, that's within our control, if you will, is to get on board with AI enablement as an industry. And the work that Rick has been heading, with the Linux Foundation, to me has the potential to create the, if you will, the cross-silo standard for how to implement data so that it's AI enabled.
I would argue, Steve, that this is a trend issue and it's got multiple dimensions. So if you say cybersecurity, you say OT complexity, and you say AI readiness, now you're hitting a much larger population of people who will likely respond to at least one or two, if not all three.
Right. Yeah, I agree that I think that whatever the enablement solution looks like, it has to incorporate cyber unquestionably, Glenn. I'm just saying that for us to figure out how Rick's vision of this future where some companies come into this built space and say, hey, we're going to sell enterprise solutions. That's our game. Well, to have those companies emerge, all these systems across the board have to become AI enabled. So let's do what we can to facilitate that, to make sure that at least our industry is leaders in that regard, and so that we're not a blocker, we're an enabler.
I have two thoughts on that. I think if there is anyone out of our industry that could do this, this is a role that some of the big companies could take. They're already doing it, right? They have other divisions that do other things, other verticals. I would imagine that this is an opportunity for them to pivot their messaging a little bit and really step into that role and start this ball rolling. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see that. But the other thing that popped in my head in our industry, there are a couple of national dominating trade associations, right? In restaurants, it's NRA, National Restaurant Association. In convenience store, it's NACS, which is the equivalent of that National Association of Convenience Stores. And getting entities like that educated, promoting, writing articles on the benefits of doing this and getting them into that thought leadership or that messaging body seems like a good way to get it started, at least a little bit in the verticals I'm in. And I would imagine there are similar kinds of associations for some of the other verticals that in big box retail, there certainly are. I don't know if there's an association of chemical producing manufacturers or
There
not.
is.
Well, I mean, as we
Certainly there is in
discussed,
like semiconductor industry, we're in that, and there's a couple of leading, sort of associations that people look towards, in fact, paid for by the industry. So
yeah, as we talked about last week, I certainly agree with the vertical focus. All of the value propositions are vertical and don't involve buildings as a horizontal. So I'm solidly behind that, and I think that's a good way to get out there. But a group like ASHRAE, which has great horizontal reach, doesn't have the kind of vertical reach into value propositions that are needed on a market by market
We
basis.
struggle with this stuff. I mean, you see me doing my exercises every 5 minutes, like I'm getting up because I got an occupancy sensor here. Like where Universal Studios was using Bluetooth emissions from customers a decade ago. Like I'm telling you, that's gonna be the new killer app out here at Cal State Dominguez Hills. Detect my cell phone Bluetooth emissions. Know that it's Keith Gibson. I'm authorized vendor to be here. Stop turning the lights off every 5 minutes, making me exercise. Like this is state of the art for the building control in silo. Like we got to do better. And just like it's man, every 5 minutes, I mean, get my exercise, but geez, can we do better than that? Coming soon from facility.
another place where this messaging could carry is in the Linux Foundation. Right? They have projects that literally cross every vertical operating type of industry or operation within businesses even. So places like that is another place where centralized messaging about interoperability could live.
And those horizontal, so the Linux Foundation is oriented both by vertical and by horizontal technology. And as we get our roadmap sort of put together, navigating to those other industries and those other groups and saying, hey, we're actually getting our act together around open source and open standards. It's a fairly easy navigation. And I think that's a great point. And that's sort of already doing that, like with the energy silo, trying to do it with the networking silo. And I get a couple of emails a week now about, hey, what are you guys up to? How are you guys coming along? So
Well, even back to Jim's point about ASHRAE, ASHRAE is pretty vertically focused, but even within ASHRAE in the building's niche that it sort of plays with, there are, going way back to what Keith said, we don't even share data among our own stuff, right? So that's kind of a subset of what I was talking about, but I bet there's opportunity even at the level of like at ASHRAE or something, for instance, to back this messaging.
Wondering if we can pick Glenn's brain here. Glenn, what about other vertical markets that you touch? How are people crossing silos in their organizations in other verticals, like industrial automation, et cetera?
We just did a huge effort for largest San Jose-based networking company on the industrial and mission critical spaces. And I'll just say, one in the larger, more sophisticated, subset of all of that players, they're driving a huge amount of collaboration and convergence around IT and OT, basically driven out of the three things I said earlier: cyber risk, OT complexity, and AI readiness. And the problem is this space is so splintered up in its decision making and decision structures and decision processes and behaviors. It's the only space I've ever been in, but it's like who's on first. And I think that makes it doubly or triply hard to convey this kind of enterprise proposition. But the rest of the world is, other than maybe the public sector for other critical infrastructure and things like that, are mostly, companies, not, that are organized to actually make and dictate changes in the way they operate. And so when you come up with a great idea or formula, or recipe, whatever, to try and figure out how to communicate this to such a splintered and fragmented buying crowd, it's almost like you need to be writing the story so it's appealing by default to the C-suite, whoever they are, and try and make them feel like they need to pay attention to this, because I'm not sure what else you can do about all that fragmentation and buying behavior.
Right.
regardless of vertical, almost.
Yeah, I mean, by comparison, I mean, the only other place where I see screwy decision making is in the public sector. It's like, a lot of cooks in the kitchen and a lot of chaos. But in your basic real enterprise. So, I mean, obviously, another way of saying this would be, identifying those buying behaviors and those more unified owner operator likely driven organizations where there is a little bit more control over what they're doing from a decision making and organizing this for this kind of future. That's the crowd you want to be focused on, not the ones that are all fragmented up and crazy or managing properties for a short period of time or whatever.
I told you guys we needed to get out of the buildings business.
Okay, all
For
right,
years,
I'll
for
try to think of
years, we've
something
been saying
optimistic
that.
to say.
But there was,
Sorry.
so attaching what we've done for our 4 decades worth of careers to the bigger definition of buildings, because buildings are that's a much bigger number, right? And so that's the part where the cross silos, again, the original question for today was for the other systems that are in buildings, whether it's an ERP, the other silos. So it's an ERP, construction, design. When you add all those silos together, that's the $30 a square foot, market size times 90 or 100 billion square feet or whatever it is. So by attaching ourselves to the other silos, we actually become more important to the C-suite. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And that's where, to Keith's point, if we would get out of our own way, we could make our data available to the rest of the silos and vice versa. And all of a sudden you have this valuable value proposition, the value proposition that is $30 a square foot per year. And we should be able to save 30% of that. So now all of a sudden
But that is effectively a brand new message.
well, it's
that
not,
has-
but it's not a brand new desire from the market.
Yeah, but
Not
nobody's
But what is new?
nobody's ever been able to offer that or even talk about that.
Every time we get close, we get shut down.
Oh, now, let's not take our ball and go home.
Am I projecting again?
Well, my argument would be the whole AI readiness and the cyber risk thing and OT complexity. Sorry, I'm just hammering this home, but these are all new. I mean, these are all things that are relatively timely. And I think that's, if you combine this with this cross silo story, I think you've got a decent story that will reach more ears.
My experience in the past has been that the industry has always been moved by the sophisticated early adopters in the building industry, and Keith told that story at the start, and that's certainly been my experience. Was getting close to the client and having them actually build the systems that weren't there, and I think they still exist, and I think inside of their organizations are people that understand a good piece of what it is we need to do to pull these silos together. So I would encourage us as an industry to seek out these folks that are willing to talk to us, that share our dream and get projects going And then those demonstration projects change the industry faster than anything. Because, but rather than spending our time beating our head against the wall trying to convince somebody that this might work, there are people out there that know this will work. And we should be working with those people and promoting those examples. The connection to Linux, I think, is the Linux Foundation and the work you're doing as well with C4SB. That's an important piece of it. People have to kind of embrace all of those things. But just, I think we live in a time when it's easier to do stuff than it is to talk about it. Let's just physically let's get this done. Let's get some examples. And everybody should take that on as a task. My humble opinion.
No, I agree. I would also add for that large networking company I mentioned earlier, we built a business case for this and interviewed a bunch of customers who I would describe as leaders and sophisticated, and they were all saving a lot more. They were saving a lot of money, and I mean there was ample evidence that you could make a pretty strong business case for this if you organize it to convey it easily to consume.
And using the channel that has the best access to the C-suite would seem like the most sense, right? So do we care if it's the architect that makes the sale for us, or if it's the construction company that makes the sale, or if it's the maintenance management and facility management company that makes the sale? I mean, if the sale includes the whole bundle of all the silos working together, do we really care who takes the paper? And that's where when Anno Schulten is on here, I mean, he's talking about work. He works for, I'm putting words in his mouth. We're not supposed to talk about companies that we work for, but I mean, it's a facilities management company. Do we care if that's how the deal gets driven? And what I'm getting at is that we really shouldn't care whether it's the construction company, the design company, facilities management company, God forbid, a controls company. But if we get all the silos working together, do we really care who makes the sale? And the answer, or the person who makes the sale, is going to be the one with the best relationship, best lobbyists, best relationship with the owner, and can make the business case of that enterprise value. But if we get our technology in order and make it easy for people to see that this stuff is all going to work together, then the C-suite can say, hey, my best friend, works for a facilities management company or works for a construction company. I'm going to buy the solution through that channel. And
I think one of the big things we've got going for us is that the solution will be very varied, dependent on the team that puts it together, and also the collection of snowflake buildings they have underneath that. And I think that is the message we need to bring to the industry, is that we can work out almost anything because we have a million solutions and a million drivers, and we might go over and put this on another network just to collect a whole bunch of data to bring back over to this cloud and move it all around. The diversity of what we can do now is just amazing, and let's amaze people. Let's get on with it. Get on with the task. And I think the other thing, everybody knows, everybody's had that experience of working with a sophisticated owner and basically C-suite, let's put it that way, working with a sophisticated C-suite that understands and embraces what it is you want to do. And my God, your job is just so simple when you're working with these people, because everybody's motive is the same. We all want this to work. And yet we go into these arenas where we keep beating our head against the wall, trying to convince somebody that they should do something useful. And it's just like, if you're not there yet, give me a call when you get your head around this, because, we need to move.
The thing that I've got out of this conversation is that while thinking about a vertical use of building, a vertical segment of a building like hospital is useful to sort of narrows it down in terms of what the building needs to do, it does not seem to get any way towards breaking down the silos it really doesn't do much of that.
Because the silos exist in every vertical.
Yes.
Yeah.
Silos that exist in the vertical. Just focusing on the vertical doesn't solve that problem.
But Ken's point, being able to customize the silos to the particular vertical is more possible now than ever.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we need to form a higher level of silos. Let's get all of the applications working within one silo, and then we'll worry about crossing silos.
No, that will never happen. That cannot happen
Well,
because there is
Part
a
of
very
the part
good.
of the issue here is fundamentally we need interoperability to happen at the very lowest level, right? The way things are just put together and communicate at the you know, even the physical layer to some degree. I don't want to get into a debate over networking and all that kind of stuff, but until we make all those data points available across all industries at that level, people are going to come at this problem from the top down and they'll build big monolith solutions that take in, create data lakes and take in data from multiple vertical applications. And that's going to be the solution, I think, unfortunately, for a while, until we can really get more vertical industries, more vertical applications sharing data at a very fundamental level, I think.
But what if we push AI right out to the edge and then we can almost completely eliminate all of that? The AI does its own data collection, it runs its own small language base, and it does what it's physically was designed to do. And when you ask it a question, you can ask it any question and get the information. I think do we really need that level of immediate integration? I think as long as we can get the information and act on it.
I
We have that
totally
opportunity.
agree with that, Ken. Totally agree with that. And I've been saying, now for a couple of weeks, when I had that little bit of a light bulb moment, that AI is the solution to this problem, I think.
I agree.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
And even
which
as
is why I
we-
brought up enablement. Let's
Yeah.
do it all that we need to do to enable. And that's the best thing we can do for our industry.
And I think that's doable too. I mean, putting AI at the top of each one of these silos,
Mhm.
and storage and AI, basically moving it up, just the drawing you had back there, Anto, moving it all up, and then we had virtual silos. And on the
Yeah.
virtual silos, yeah,
That
AI
is
ready.
basically
Yeah.
depicted.
Yeah, that's basically, once we're there, then we can now then go right down to an edge. We can go down to inside of one of those silos, enable that device, make that device AI ready, and move AI right out to the edge. And then we can ask through here, down through the silo, or it brings up the issue as to whether in fact the silo would talk there, or whether it's going to.
Well, the way to think about it is that these blue disks is really where AI is seeing all of the silos.
Yes,
As far as
okay.
AI is concerned, it's just there, right? But each one of these blue disks, this is
Mhm.
why it's also a digital twin, is a virtual representation of something, including HVAC.
Is there any
So
significance in why that one doesn't touch the others? I like the
Mm,
idea that they all touch each other and share data, but the one
no, no
that-
reason.
there was no reason. That's
Uh,
just the type.
Artistic style.
Okay, good. I was trying to figure out the complication of that. Sorry, okay. But anyway,
All right.
the bottom thing is AI is going to have a big effect on redesigning all of our networks and hierarchies, I think.
it's going to allow us to be really lazy and sloppy.
What do you think of
That's a
that,
good
Jim?
thing in a good way, right?
And
Yeah.
that's a good thing to end the month of March.
Good
So we
slide.
can be lazy. Yay.
Lazy and
Lazy
sloppy.
and
as we go
sloppy.
into
I like
April.
that theme.
Yeah.
All right, we need to bring this to a wrap. Thank you very much. Thanks, Glenn. Oh, Keith is going to
Keith is in the
bye-bye.
dark again.
Yeah,
Rob.
that's right.
Come on, Keith, stand
That's
up.
a
will you?
short,
go.
that's a short timer, man, on that thing.
There it is.
Yeah.
That is a
All
short
right.
time.
It's
Gee.
great. So next week we'll be back in the month of April, and we're going to be talking about a new theme. We're going to be talking about ontologies. I'm just going to leave it there. Going to be a fun month. But anyway, have a great week this week. We'll get the video out soon, but otherwise, have a great week. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.